Do you want to stay more focused on the right goals in your life, or even just figure out what the right goals are for you? Do you want clarity? Do you want better work-life balance? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Success Through Failure.
Welcome to the Success Through Failure podcast, the show that reveals failure as your path to success. You'll listen to intriguing interviews with some of the most successful people on the planet and learn how their failures became a launchpad for success and how yours can too. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, speaker, and personal coach, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Success Through Failure. Today, I bring you Coach John McKissick. Before I bring on my guest, I need to share something important. For years, I struggled to feel confident around the type of people that I spend much of my time with. Successful people, millionaires, CEOs, and leaders. Part of it was mindset, but also part of it is how I looked. Look good, feel good, as the saying goes. And I didn't look good. I didn't have clothes that made me feel confident. So I started buying expensive shirts, but then I had to get them tailor fit to me and athletic build. Then I discovered a new shirt. It's not only designed by athletes for athletes, it's designed to fit an athlete's body type. And it's made of athletic material. It's like putting on your favorite workout shirt, but it's a business shirt. It's machine washable and wrinkle free, which is a total deal breaker for me. I hate high maintenance clothing. And it looks better than the expensive shirts that I used to buy, and it even costs less. Now I feel confident that I'm wearing good-looking, well-fitted clothing that's designed to fit me. You can try one on yourself, totally risk-free because it's free shipping for you, one of my listeners. Just visit their website, stateandliberty.com, and use the discount code SUCCESS. That's State and Liberty, S-T-A-T-E, stateandliberty.com, and use the discount code SUCCESS. Returns and exchanges are totally free within 30 days, so there's absolutely zero risk for you to try one on. Again, go to stateandliberty.com and use the discount code SUCCESS. In 1952, Harry S. Truman was president. A new show premiered on NBC called The Today Show, and Coach John McKissick was named the head football coach of Summerville High School in Summerville, South Carolina. He was 25 years old and just finished a stint with the 82nd Airborne. 63 years later, he retired from the same school. He carried just a few accolades, including the winningest football coach of all time at any level. He won 621 games in 63 seasons. He won 10 state championships and had just 2 losing seasons in that time. This was a phone call I called Coach McKissick at his home, and I really didn't want to read the bio for him while he was on the phone. He's an older gentleman, and I just wanted to get right into the interview. So that's what we do here today is as soon as I click over here, it's going to go straight into the interview. And as usual, if you want to get the action plan, which I highly suggest from this episode, go to jimharshawjr.com/action. That's jimharshawjr.com/action. Now for my conversation with Coach John McKissick. So you're 90 years old now, and you've been retired a couple of years. How's retirement been treating you?
Well, I don't really like it, but it was time that I was getting too old. My balance was bad, and I still enjoyed it, but it was time that I hung it up.
Yeah, and you're a great grandfather now. You get to spend more time with the family.
Yeah, we got a house over at the beach, and we go over there about every other weekend and spend the weekend over there. And I'm too old to go out on the beach now. Eat up with skin cancer.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, we go and check the property out and all that.
And one thing you mentioned, you said you knew it was time, and obviously you've been doing this for 63 years. How did you know it was time that year? Why not 5 years earlier or 1 year later? I mean, what was it that told you that it was time?
Well, I noticed I didn't get around as quick as I used to. And my last few years, the assistant coaches did most of the coaching, and I didn't interfere too much. And I felt like I didn't want to get in their way, and but I felt like that I was backing off too much. And when you start backing off, it's time to quit.
And I understand that the current head coach is your grandson. Is that right?
Yeah, he played quarterback for Summerville High School for 4 years, and then he got a full scholarship to the Citadel and went down there and played. So he knows football. He's a quarterback.
And certainly he grew up under your system, and it sounds like a lot of the coaching staff has been under your system. And so talking about that system, I mean, you were a coach for a long time, and not only did you coach for 6+ decades, but because a lot of coaches coach for a long time, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Certainly your tenure is longer than most, but you weren't just coaching for a long time. You were very successful the whole way through. I mean, you only had 2 losing seasons your entire career. You won 10 state championships, 621 wins. How were you so consistently able to replicate success year after year? What ingredients are in your formula?
Well, I was in a good place. Summerville was a good place for athletics, and always had a good group of loyal assistant coaches, and always had administration that let me do, as long as I was doing what I was supposed to do, they let me do it. And I never had a problem. I never had a superintendent, principal that I couldn't get along with. And they kind of had confidence in that I knew what I was doing. So they let me do it, and it was real smooth sailing all along.
And so there are probably other coaches. There are definitely other coaches across the state of South Carolina who could say the same thing. They had, supportive administration. They were in a good community that supported athletics, but something set you apart. I mean, and one thing that kind of stuck with me, what you just said, you got along with all of your administrators. I would imagine, that's something I think a lot of people can't say. And sometimes it's on the administrator's fault. Sometimes it's on the coach's fault. But what was different about you, and what were some of your philosophies that helped you find that success for so long?
Well, I was always a disciplinarian. I was in the 82nd Airborne, and that was a disciplined outfit during the war. And I always, when kids would come out for football, they knew what to expect. And I always wrote letters to all the parents and all the players that had been working in the weight room and working out and expressed a desire to play. And if I didn't write one a letter, one had been goofing off a little bit, then the parent would call me and beg to let him come out. And so that made a big difference. I didn't, during the hippie age, earrings, I didn't let them wear earrings. I didn't let them have long hair. I never told a boy to cut his hair, but at the end of practice in the 60s, some of them let it grow kind of long. You say that's a little thing, but I think it was a discipline thing that promotes winning. And at the end of practice, we would run wind sprints with the helmets off, and the ones who needed a haircut, they had to run. I'd let them go in as incentive. If a guy was hustling real good and running hard, I'd say, all right, that's enough for you. Go ahead. And then the ones that had long hair, I'd keep them a little bit longer, and then take about 2 or 3 days that they found out what I was doing.
They got the picture.
so they would clean up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard a quote from General Norman Schwarzkopf, and he said, "Shined shoes save lives." And he's talking about that same discipline, and that discipline is required for success.
I think so. I believe that too.
And so having coached for so long, you started coaching in 1952. I read that on the closest estimate would be around 5,500 or so athletes came through your program over the years. What would you say is the biggest difference between the kids that you coached at the end of your career versus the kids that you coached in the beginning of your career? What changed?
Well, I think there's a lot of little things, but the little things mount up to big things. Back early, we didn't have air conditioning in automobiles. You go into supermarkets downtown, they'd have a big overhead fan at the door. They were acclimated to the heat, and a lot of the boys in Dorchester County here, where I work, they'd live out on the farms and dairy. It was dairy farms and regular farms, and they would come out for football to get out of work. And then the city guys that didn't have to work, when they came out, it was work for them, and it wasn't work for the other guys, because they were getting out of work by coming to football practice.
Yeah. And so, over the decades, you hear people talking about society's changed, culture has changed, kids have changed, parenting has changed. Certainly some folks use that as an excuse for not winning or not finding success. As a matter of fact, I saw a video not long ago, interview of the head women's basketball coach at Louisville, sort of complaining about how students these days and athletes these days grow up in a culture where everybody gets a trophy. But the way I looked at that is, the other team, those athletes grew up in the same environment. So you were able to find success throughout the decades, despite any changes in culture and in society. Was that just your consistent application of fundamental discipline, or anything else that you can add to that?
Well, I was always. They knew what, like I said a while ago, they knew what to expect when they came out. I was always fair. I didn't treat one any different from the other, and they could. You can tell. They could see that. It wouldn't take a long time to see that it didn't make any difference. If the starter team needed a little extra work, I'd give it to him just the same as I would the guy that wasn't. And they knew I was fair. And I hear from guys all over the country, from California to Maine, that went through our program, and they appreciate having been in our program and the discipline. And they'll tell me all the time that you were fair and your discipline was strict, but it made a better man out of me. That's what they would tell me.
Yeah. And there's a lot of coaches that will listen to this interview. What would you say to them in terms of, the coaches who are maybe struggling to create a winning program? Maybe they feel like they don't have the support from the administration, or maybe they do, but they're facing certain challenges. I mean, are there any advice that you share regularly with younger coaches that are looking to create success anywhere close to yours?
Well, I'd say be yourself. Don't try to copy Vince Lombardi, or don't try to be a Bear Bryant. Just be who you are and be consistent. And you can tell right quick if the administration is going to back you. And most all administrations will back you, will have you back if you work hard and you do what's right. Sometime you'll find an administrator that is jealous of the program, and a lot of the teachers in the school where you work that don't really understand. They think football practice is playtime, and that we aren't working. And to have a meeting that all the teachers are supposed to go to, and most all your assistant coaches are teachers, my administration would always, we would find out what went on at the meetings, but they would let the coaches go ahead and work. And I had a superintendent one time who said, told the teachers that were griping about the coaches not coming to the meetings. He said, well, I think they'll trade places with you. You go out there in the hot sun for 2 hours, and they'll sit in the air condition and trade places if you want to trade places. So if you got administrators like that, you're not going to have any problems. Jealousy is the worst thing that can happen to anybody in schoolwork.
And it's reported, or at least I read somewhere, that you didn't really cut athletes from your team. Is that right?
Didn't what?
Cut athletes? Did you trim your roster and cut athletes?
I never cut them. They would cut themselves, and I would invite them out, and I never really had to cut one. I cut 2 one time for disciplinary, for staying out and drinking and stuff like that. But that's the only reason. I never cut one for ability. If he couldn't play, if he didn't have any talent, when we'd get ahead on Friday nights, I'd put him in the game and make them happy, make the parents happy, and then they would work harder in practice. And you always have a lot of them that aren't athletic, but I never would cut those kind.
It's interesting hearing that from you, because you hear a lot of parents and people talking these days that coaches shouldn't put a kid in just because they want him to get some playing time. But you see it the other way. You see, you never cut a kid because he couldn't perform. And that's sort of something you hear a lot of outcry in society. I feel like these days saying that we're being too soft on kids and we need to cut them. Even if they can't perform, they need to go find something else. But you believe the other way, even if they can't perform, but if they're willing to do the work, they can be part of the team.
Well, I think it makes a better person out of them. They'll be a better citizen in the community and all that if they are part of something that's positive. And so I always believe that, and it worked for me.
And was that part of your philosophy? I mean, in terms of, some coaches are, they give lip service to saying they want to create better citizens. And I'll be honest, there's some out there. I can think of one recently that he's the head wrestling coach at the University of Iowa. He said it really is all about winning. And I disagree with that. I think a lot of people disagree with that. I think you can do it the way that you did it. But is that a core part of your philosophy?
Yeah, well, I think if you fail and you work hard, the winning's gonna come. You can't put the winning before the work and all that. You gotta put some time into it. And I always had good support at home. My wife, I had 2 daughters, and they were always 100% behind it. My wife never said a word to me about coming home late for supper or eating at 10 o'clock at night when they're supposed to eat at 6. They were always supportive, and I think that helped me a lot.
And it sounds like you also believe in the value of, coaches' ability and sports' ability to create better citizens and better people and better parents. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think, I don't want to blow my own horn, but I think that's happened in our community. We've made a lot of good citizens, and I see them all the time, and the ones that still live here, and they hear from the ones who are living off. So I feel good about that.
Now, are there any particular team rules that were just deal breakers or unbreakable rules? I always had the little rules, and I would let them decide. Just like the first day, I'd get on the blackboard, and I'd say, "All right, now we're gonna put up some rules here that we're going by."
So I'd put a number 1 up there, and I'd put no smoking. I said, "Do all of you agree with that? If you don't agree, I'll race it out." And of course, they would all agree: no drinking, no smoking, no staying out late, no getting in trouble, be polite to the teachers, and all that. And it worked for me.
And what about team captains? Do you have a philosophy on choosing team captains? Did you choose them? Did the coaching staff choose them? Did the athletes and team choose the team captains?
The athletes and the team, we would vote on them. And I wouldn't vote until right before the first game and all the preseason. That would give them a chance to see who the leaders were and who the guys were that should be captains, and that's how I always did it. Then I would get 2 or 3 of my senior players to come in, and we'd count the votes so they wouldn't think that I was rigging it.
Sure. That's something you hear a lot of sort of different philosophies on, and pros and cons of all the different philosophies. So it's interesting to hear that you let the team select their own captains. That's great. And
well, they would always do just about 100%. Always do the ones that I would have picked if I had to pick them.
Yeah, interesting. And we look at a guy like you, a coach like you. You've been around for a long time, and you won so many games. You're the winningest coach of any in American football at any level ever. 10 state championships, 8 players that have gone on to the NFL, only 2 losing seasons out of 63. Was there a time that where you failed that you can share with us and share with me and share with the listener? A time where you failed and maybe created some self-doubt or some uncertainty in your mind that you can share with us, and maybe how you got through that and how you managed to deal with that failure?
Well, that first losing season I had, where we won 1, tied 1, and lost 8. I had to let two first-string offensive tackles go for breaking the rules, staying out, and wasn't doing what they were supposed to do, and so we went 1, 1, and 8. And then the next year we won the region championships.
Wow.
So, but I said I would throw it up. I would talk to the teams about what happened last year, the next year, and all that. And I say it can happen to any of us, but it ain't gonna happen to us, because we're gonna do what we're supposed to do is right. Do it right, do it light, do it wrong, do it long.
That's great. Is there a particular game that sticks out in your mind? I know you've obviously played a lot of games. You won a lot of championships and probably a lot of amazing memories and experiences. Is there one game or maybe 2 games that really stand out in your mind that you can really remember?
Well, I guess I'm being a little negative now, but we were playing for the state championship in Williams-Brice Stadium in Columbia, at University of South Carolina, and we were leading 21 to 6 at the half, and we came back, and with about a minute to go, we were still ahead. They came back and scored a time or 2, and we punted the ball, and it went out of bounds on their 4-yard line, and they took it the length of the field by a couple of penalties and a couple of bad plays on our part, and won the game. And so we got beat and should have won it. And that's the kind that really dwells on you.
Yeah, well, I have a few of those. As a former wrestler, and I think just athletes in general, you tend to remember some of those painful losses. I certainly don't remember all the wins that I've had, but I can remember just about every loss, and those are the ones that really motivate you.
You're right about that.
So my listeners like to get an action item. one sort of thing, something concrete maybe that they can take and execute and do in the next day or two, something that they can take action on in the next 24 to 48 hours to help them, whether it's be a better coach or be a better person or really find the long-term peace of mind that you had in coaching for 63 years. But one action item that you can recommend to the listener that they can take in the next 24 to 48 hours?
Yeah, I just say be yourself. Don't as I said a while ago, don't try to be somebody else. And if you yourself and you do what you believe, then the kids will they'll catch on and they'll know. And that's about all I can say about that.
Yeah,
just
great advice. It's that fundamental advice, something we've heard for so many years, but it's such a hard thing to do is just be yourself. And that's great advice. So I appreciate that. Now, do you have any resources that you really leaned on over the years? Maybe a favorite book or something that really helped you learn and grow and develop either as a coach or as a person?
Well, I guess since I started coaching in 1952, 53 was my first year. I like to read philosophies. John Wooten, he's basketball, but I like to read books like that. All the things that I did, I never did read fiction and stuff like that after I started coaching. I just read about other guys and not being like them, but just trying to understand what their philosophies and what they were doing.
And sounds like you were constantly learning and trying to take in new information from other coaches who were successful.
Well, I tell you what, you never learn everything you need to know. I did it 63 years, and I still think there's a lot of things out there I needed to know. But you never learn it all.
Yeah, amen to that, Coach. If you could go back and talk to your 25-year-old self, I think you started coaching when you were 25 years old. If you could sit down at the table and talk to your 25-year-old self, is there a piece of advice that you would share with your younger self who just started into coaching, probably didn't know that, you didn't know that you were going to be there for the next 63 years. Is there a piece of advice that you would offer your younger self?
Well, what I would say, you treat everybody the same, but everybody's not the same. But as long as you fail, I would say just work hard, be fair, and always be honest with them. This day and time, with television and they get a coaching clinic when they watch a college game. They got the commentators there with drawing the plays and showing things. So you got to be straight up with them. You got to be honest. And if you don't, they'll pick up on it. And the parents, the parents are different now than they used to be. But I always would.
How so? How would you say parents are different now than in the past?
Well, they more worldly. They know more about what's going on now than they used to know because of television and all that stuff. There's a lot of them that keep up with it pretty good. And when you're talking to them, you can say, well, they've been studying this thing. So don't get the fur up on your back because somebody tells you that something that you know is right. And but you don't need their advice. Don't ever show that part of it.
Well, Coach, you've shared a lot of great wisdom with us today. We could certainly talk for a long time. I'm sure you have many, many stories and a lot of wisdom that you could share with the listeners. I appreciate you making the time to come on the show. You're an inspiration. We can learn so much just by the short time that we spent with you, we can learn so much about how to carry ourselves and how to lead other people. So thank you for your time, Coach.
Okay, Jim.